Apple, we actually speak apple.
Like we use the lift. Like what is an elevator?
It lifts you up.
So we still use like the British word.
Personally, it's more easier to hear, sexy to hear.
Hello!
I didn't know Malaysia had English as an official language, and I didn't know that Bangladesh had English as an official language either. I want to say that I'm the most impressed by maybe the Filipino accent. They try really hard to sound fluent. They try to say it like really slowly and clearly, but they're really good at it. So that's interesting to me. Okay, well, I would say for American English, of course, when I was younger, I didn't even realize Americans had an accent. To me, I only knew like the accents of like Southern people versus Northern people and like the California accent. And a lot of people tell me that it sounds more laid back, free, or even sometimes kind of lazy. Sometimes even Americans can't understand each other if they have a really strong accent.
Okay, so in the Philippines, English is also an official language. So at school or at work, we use the English language. Generally, the Filipino English follows like the American accent. So for example, for the A sound, we usually try to speak it clearly, like apple, bank. Because when I heard from other friends, they usually say bank as bank. So I think that's a tiny difference from other countries.
So in India, the English accent changes from the state, and it is not just that we have American influence or the UK accent influence. It's more also that we take a part of our regional language to the English accent that we have. So it can be very different from the east to west to north to south, because the official language is Hindi and English in India. Schools which like the teaching is done in English or the teaching is done in Hindi. So I think it also depends on which kind of school you are from. Their accent is also influenced by they have studied in. I think that in the southern side, the TH sound is very strong, and L and R sounds are kind of mixed, like L. And in the north, the R and A sounds are very dominantly said. You know, the accent is never really the same. I think that mostly the people that have heard in Indian accent is usually Southern Indian accent, because I do believe that a lot of South Indian people go and live abroad more than the North or the East or the West people.
So one thing I think is interesting about Indian English is that you say the words very similarly to American English, except for a few like enunciations. Indian people, when they speak English, it has a very similar rhythm.
I think the rhythm comes from the regional or the mother tongue that we use. Some languages are a little sing-song or have more tones to it, and like I think it's a lot of times is the ending, how we say the ending. For me, I feel I am neutral, but I'm not sure. You have to tell me that.
I still think you are a bit like sing-songy when you talk. It's like really nice.
Oh, okay.
In my country, we use a lot of foreign words in our country, since like English is the second official language. Cup, fan, like we use that like English word, not like Bengali. And in school, there's like two curriculum. There's like Bengali curriculum and the English curriculum. People mostly in my country study in Bengali curriculum. So yeah, and we use about like S, like sa. We mostly use sha, sh. Apple, we actually speak Bengali like apple. Yeah, it's something like this.
English in South Africa. Actually, it's one of 11 official languages in South Africa. So we learn it mainly at school. So for a lot of people from a very young age, we would go to school and speak English at school. But when you go home, you would speak a different language. So it's very much about education. It's also used mostly in like workplaces, most stores when you go in. And the accent also varies from where you're from. So if you're from parts of Cape Town, it's going to be very different. If you're from Johannesburg, it's very different. If you're from other places as well in South Africa, it's a little bit different. So there isn't a fixed English accent, I would say, in South Africa. It just depends on who you meet. but it is a little distinctive in the sense that I notice that people do pick up on it when I speak sometimes. For example, in the US you say purple, we say purple.
It sounds Australian a little
Right,
bit.
so we're kind of stuck between Australia, New Zealand and the UK, because I know Australians would say water. From the UK they say water, but we say water.
Yeah.
So there's those little differences as well, and I think it's also influenced by the fact that we speak other languages as well, and they kind of get mixed into the English as well. So I would say my accent also is a mixture of growing up in the city and a little bit of the countryside together, and then this is what I got as well. So yeah, that's about the South African accent.
So Malaysian English, I think it's similar to South Africa, where there's so many languages in one country, so everything kind of gets mixed up. But so proficiency wise, it really depends on the person's background, their education, and what their mother tongue is, because it could be Chinese, Tamil, Malay, or English. So for my case, it's more English. So like I had to learn my Chinese in school, and we have actually different schools. The normal Malay school, Chinese school, the Indian school. I'm not sure about now, but for my time, our math and science were in English. But my parents' time, everything was in English. So it's very different. But I think generally people, although they might have like a strong Malaysian accent, they speak pretty good English in Malaysia. So that's why I have a lot of friends traveling in Malaysia. They were like, oh yeah, we just use English because it's not a problem. People speak like fluent English. Characteristic wise, it's the la. We use the la a lot. I don't know why, let me think. I think it's because there's this same grammar where the la is like at the end of the sentence. So it makes everything more like lightweight, more fun. So let's say if you want to say like no. No is like very stern. But if you say like no la, it's like nah. It's nah. No la is nah. So I think, yeah, that's one of the main characteristics. It's really similar to Singlish, I would say. So you were actually really good in guessing. Like, it's okay, I take Singapore, I accept Singapore.
I think that like now that you guys all explained it that way, I can definitely understand each of your accents more. But I just think it's so interesting actually how now so many countries have English as an official language, but still on the internal side of your country you have like so many different schools that teach so many different, like it's so interesting to me because I'm from somewhere that like we only have one basic language and the country is so big. Like you would think there could be a possibility for more official languages, but it's just not. So that's why it seems so interesting to me.
I think in our countries, because we have a lot of languages, that it gets hard to navigate through all of the languages and there needs to be some common language. So I think that's why we have multiple official languages, and English is one of the main ones because it is used globally and it will also help to, you know, communicate between all the languages as well.
So in the Philippines, there are so many languages, and personally I'm from Cebu and we use the Visayan language, so I know the Visayan language and then the Tagalog and then the English. In our country, with the help of English, also aside from Tagalog, we all can communicate.
So I want to say that in a ranking of all of you guys' English to like an average American ear of like how easy it is to understand, I think first would be South Africa, because I think it sounds almost like perfect UK English, which a lot of Americans are already really familiar with. And then I think number 2 would be maybe like Filipino English, because it's also, like you said, also it's like really slow and you can hear every enunciation really well. So I think that that would be easier for most Americans. And then maybe it's hard for me to say if Malaysian English and Indian English is like easier to understand than one another, because to me they're both really similar in like being able to understand it, because they have a bit more of an accent, but it's not like I can't understand what they're saying. I still think average Americans would really like understand all of you guys, so it's like a really close call. But maybe because there's more Indian people in America, I would say like India, and then Malaysian English, and then maybe Bangladeshi English. I just put last because I don't really know anyone from America that like speaks Bangladeshi English. But I think it's like a really close tie with all of you guys, honestly. Like maybe even some Americans would say put India higher because there's so many Indians in America that sound just like you. And it is really easy to understand. So me personally, I've heard like a lot of Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Thai people also speaking English. If I had to rate like what would an average American understand best from those accents, it's kind of a hard decision because what influences my ranking as well is like what is like the biggest majority of these people who are in America already, because if there's more of them, I feel like more Americans will understand what they're saying because they're used to hearing it. So I think maybe honestly like Chinese would be first because there's so many Chinese people in America, and then maybe like Japanese English. I feel like a lot of Americans are kind of used to hearing that as well. And then Korean, and then Thai. Because even I've worked at a Thai restaurant before, I remember like I would have to help these really southern old people understand what my boss is saying because they are so not used to hearing their Thai English. Plus they're southern, so they have a really thick accent as well. So yeah, it was a mess, so that's why I put it as last.
I think between UK, US, and Australia, the easiest country that I would get around is probably the US. Personally, it's more easier to hear, although I really find that the UK and Australian accent really like attractive, kind of like sexy to hear. But I think the US is more like I'm used to it. So I think US.
For me, I think US would be the easiest to navigate, plus the accent is easier to understand because we have been exposed to the media. I think the hardest would be UK, honestly, because even though we do have the UK English in our country, just very hard to understand. Yeah. So I would say it'll be US, Australia, and then UK. Australian would be easier because it's still a mix. And so it's easy to catch phrases, maybe not the jokes, because I do feel Australian and UK jokes are really hard to understand. The humor is very different, and even the vocab, I feel.
I also think it's US, it's like easier to understand. And I have British friend and Scottish friend as well. Oh my god, when she like speak her own, what? Can you repeat once again? I love how Aussie English sound, but it's easier to understand like US.
I think the general answer is the US, only because we've all consumed so much like American TV. So I grew up on Disney, Nickelodeon, so that makes sense. But I do think for me personally, all three are pretty okay to understand because again, in South Africa, we all speak in different accents. So I feel like it kind of trains the ear to pick up on different accents as well. But the UK can be tricky depending on where in the UK the person is from. Because, you know, you can go from very, I guess, very thick, and you're like...
True.
So yeah, so, but I think they're all pretty easy to understand. I guess the thicker the accent is, it might be a little bit difficult, so.
For me, also the US, because we can't hide from the American media. It's everywhere. Netflix, TikTok, YouTube, Disney. So I grew up with that, so US will also be the easiest, but also it really depends which part of the US they're from, how strong their accent is. Because like, where was it again? Was it like the Texas accent or something? Yeah, the southern one, I'll be like, bro, what? Yeah. What? I think writing-wise, Malaysia, although we speak in a more like American accent now, if we try, we still write in British English. So like all the spellings, and some words we've used, like we use the lift. Like, what is an elevator?
Right, right. It's a lift.
It lifts you up.
The lift goes down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we still use like the British word. They have their own slangs, like their jokes sometimes. Yeah. It's like, we don't get it. We'll just be like, the Australian ones, I actually have a close Australian friend, and my brother-in-law is also Australian, but they don't have a strong accent. But I've met his dad before, and I'm like, please translate the English. So it really depends how strong it is, I would say.
So I'm going to rank all of you guys' English accents by attractiveness based on like what I like to hear the most. First, South Africa, because like I said, I wish you read ebooks or something. It's like so nice to hear you talk. And then maybe second place, I don't know, maybe Bangladesh actually, because you talk so like interestingly to me. I like want to keep hearing it because it's so interesting and like unique to what I heard before.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then like maybe the Malay and Philippines, because I feel like you guys talk really softly and it's like so easy to hear.
You sure?
Yeah.
Can understand? You sure or not?
Yes, law. And then I think I'll just put India last because I'm kind of used to this accent. That's just why. Okay, so I think that was so nice to hear you guys actually explain your accents more, because it's a lot more than meets the eye actually. And even I myself didn't even realize that you had so many official languages in your country. So it's actually so astounding to me how well you guys speak English, because like from a young age you have to learn so many different languages. So I think it's really interesting how all of those factors make your English accent unique.
It was nice actually to hear from everyone as well, and also for me, I like to talk about South Africa any chance I get, so that was nice. I hadn't met anyone from Bangladesh before, so that was very interesting to hear the background of their English accent and everything. But I do think it just goes to show like how much globalization, you know, because we're all from different countries and we all speak, you know, English, and it's actually quite fascinating if you think about it. So yeah, it was actually pretty good. You laugh.
Yeah. I don't want lah. I like listening to people explaining about their own countries, their background, their culture, their languages. This is usually what me and my friends over here talk about. Like being abroad, you get to hear and understand so many different type of languages or just different type of accents. I think that's just really interesting in general. And it really feels like, oh, I'm living abroad. Like, you know, you're actually outside of your eggshell. So it's really interesting.
So today I ranked different English accents based on the country.
If you like this video, do like, comment and subscribe to the channel.
We'll see you next time.
Bye!